Next, we have George Ukkuru, the General Manager at McLaren Strategic Solutions. George is a leader in AI-driven software testing and will share valuable insights into how AI is transforming the testing process. George will be presenting on empowering testers with AI, the perfect partnership. In this session, he will showcase how AI is enhancing software testing, including automated story validation, self-healing automation, and intelligent test generation for AI-based systems. His talk will provide practical examples of AI application in testing, making it must-see for anyone involved in software development and quality assurance. Let's welcome Josh to the stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I'll keep it very short. So the session is primarily around the usage of AI, and it may not be just limited to just software testers. I think some of these concepts are more applicable for anyone who's actually doing a job in software engineering. So one of the questions that I have, assuming that you're working in, I would say, software engineering, whether it's DevOps, a software development job, or software testing, how many of you think that your job or AI will actually replace your job in the next couple of years? Anyone who feels that you're going to lose your job maybe in the next 1 year or so, can you raise your hands? Okay. Anyone who feels that you may be replaced in a few years? No? Okay. And do you think that AI will assist you, but the AI may not replace you in the next few years? Anyone who thinks that? Okay. And does anyone feel that AI will not have any impact on maybe any of your, what I would say, roles that you're performing? Does anyone feel that? No, okay. So I did the survey a few weeks back, not a week, few weeks back, I think it was last week. I did a survey via LinkedIn, primarily focusing around software testing because I'm primarily from that background. So the results that I got was very similar. Almost 72% of the people who were working in the stream felt that they're not going to be replaced by AI, but AI is definitely going to assist them or is going to help them make their jobs better. And I think we are close to 2,000 people participating in this survey, and it was almost like a clear result that AI is definitely going to assist them, but not replace. But I would say in the last 3 years, if you look at software engineering, whether it is development or testing, there has been significant progress around the usage of AI, okay? Especially with ChatGPT, OpenAI, Copilot, and other things coming in. There are a lot of new tools that have actually come into the market, which can actually replace maybe some of these jobs maybe in the next 6 to 8 years. And from my personal experience, what I have felt is at least most of these tools, like GPTs or custom tools that you develop, most of these tools have the capability to actually save at least 1 hour per day, which is actually significant savings, whether you're running a product company or a services organization. But on the contrary, there are a lot of challenges that you may face on a day-to-day basis when you're dealing with software engineering or software testing. So from a DevOps standpoint, the reason why DevOps exists is primarily because most of the times testers were not able to provide feedback to the development team on time, and that is the reason the entire concept of continuous testing came in. Even now, it's actually a challenge in many organizations. And you also have challenges with respect to poor test coverage because testers don't get enough time to actually write test cases. And even developers do not get enough time to write proper unit test cases. And that's one of the reasons why you actually have even software testing as a stream, because developers are not able to do their work properly, which was basically unit testing. Otherwise, you will not even see, I would say, 25% of the testers that exist, because the developers have done a good job, software testing stream itself would not have existed. And now, even if you're working in an organization where there is continuous testing, DevOps, and all of those things, one of the common challenges that you might see is there's a huge amount of test scripts that fails when you're running it as part of your DevOps pipeline or when you're trying to trigger it manually. And that's one of the common issues where you actually have high failure rates when it comes to test automation. And you may be collecting a lot of data through maybe different tools, but many organizations still don't actually use their data to drive any kind of insight. You have beautiful dashboards, but managers just look at those dashboards and they don't actually take any kind of actions. So there are multiple challenges like what I mentioned, but the common trend that I've seen in many organizations, which is driven by the management, is to use AI to solve every damn problem that is there. But that need not be the case. There are certain problems that can be solved without AI, and there are problems that can be solved with the help of AI. In this example itself, for example, maybe involving testing team early in the life cycle is a problem which can be solved even without using AI. But now the trend is basically any problem that you have, you're trying to bring in a solution that actually has an AI flavor, which may not be required. I would say even from a testing standpoint, maybe there are very complex problems, like 25% or less than 20% of the problems may require an AI solution. But these solutions have been very effective. And I'll cover a few examples from my experience on why AI or where AI can be used from a software testing or engineering standpoint. The first place is, it need not be an engineer's job or a test engineer's job. One is basically user story review, okay? So every organization, the primary reason why Agile exists today is because the problems that we had with requirements in the waterfall methodology, requirements were actually not collected properly. It was actually very stringent in some cases where it doesn't change. There are a lot of change management process. And that's the entire reason why we are actually moving on to user stories or Agile methodologies. But even with user stories, there are a lot of issues with respect to the way user stories are documented. If you look at organizations, you might actually see that there's a huge number of issues that actually comes in when you actually start your sprint because your user stories are of very poor quality. Because you may have a one-liner and you may actually start off with your sprint, and middle of the sprint you may feel that the user story is actually not complete, and you go back and forth between the product owner and the business analyst. So user stories is definitely a use case that can be actually considered for, I would say, from an AI standpoint, where there are tools that can actually help you to review the quality of a user story. For example, there are industry frameworks like Invest, Smart, and ActUSA, which can be used to define and, I would say, review user stories. And you can actually use a user story analysis engine. So there are at least 3 tools that I've come across. There's a tool called Scope Master. There is a tool called Copilot for DevOps. There are multiple tools, even, I would say, like custom tools, that can actually allows you to automate the process of reviewing user stories. And I'm talking about maybe reviewing maybe a quantity of around, I would say, 100 user stories in a span of maybe 1 minute. And if you're trying to do this entire process manually, what typically happens is it may take maybe an expert in your team to spend a full day going through all the user stories and then find out anomalies. So this entire process can be automated either using a commercial solution, or even you can use something like OpenAI to implement or to automate the process of doing user story reviews with bringing in intelligence. And now, you don't have to depend on the industry frameworks to do this. You can actually use, I would say, a combination of industry frameworks, OpenAI, and you can train this engine, or train your user analysis engine or user story analysis engine to actually take user stories from your repository and then give you what I would say an ambiguity log, which is something like a list of issues that you find based on the what I would say, issues that you have in your user story. It can be a testability issue, or it can be a consistency issue where you are actually contradicting between, I would say, user stories in the same project. And you can actually automatically apply a fix or work with your, I would say, business analyst to actually bring in a correction. And now there are other tools that are currently available. For example, DevAssure is a very good tool that I've seen, which actually has the capability to generate test cases from these user stories. So the output that you get is basically start off with a user story, and with a combination of tools, you basically improve the quality of user stories, which is not something that even the testers are going to get benefited from. Even the development team is actually going to get a lot of benefit by improving the quality of user stories. And then once you have a corrected user stories, you can even go to the extent of generating test cases, okay? And test case generation is definitely one area where you can apply a lot of automation as well as AI. If we look at functional test generation, you can actually generate test cases from workflow diagrams. You can generate test cases from a Figma screen, and you can generate test cases from APIs. There's a lot of what I would say automation that can be done. So if you look at just user stories and function test generation, on an average, you can save up to maybe like 30% of your time if you're using a combination of tools. Now, the other common problem that exists within software testing is you actually have builds that are actually being deployed for the testing team. So you may actually have maybe on a daily basis, you may actually have pipelines being built where you're actually getting built for testing. And your primary job might be to actually test maybe the new functionality as well as to regress the existing features of the application. So I've seen very large websites having around, I would say, 15,000 regression test cases. And you may hardly get a day's time to actually run your regression pack. And even if you have automated it, and even if you have integrated that with DevOps, you may require a very large infrastructure to run those tests. So the standard methodology that is followed in, I would say, 99% of the organization is expert judgment. The test lead or the project manager takes a call that we'll execute maybe 10% of the test cases based on the requirements that have come in. And then you actually take a risk of pushing something into production and it may fail. Okay? So regression test selection is an area, along with maybe test impact analysis, that's another use case where you can easily, what I would say, help or take help with the help of AI. You can actually look at reducing the number of regression test cases that you execute for a build. There are two ways it can be done. One is by looking at the historical data. Okay? So you may have a lot of data around the number of tests that you've run, again, and also you may have history about these changes that you have implemented in production or in your test environments. You can actually use those historical data. And there are tools, commercial tools, which can actually help you to find out what may be the best set of tests that you can run in the shortest amount of time to complete your regression testing. And one of the most popular tools that have actually come in this segment is a tool called Launchable, which actually is a commercial tool, which actually has the intelligence to tell you exactly, maybe I have 50 minutes of time, how many tests or what are the best tests that I should execute to find the maximum number of bugs. And this is completely based on machine learning models, and the engine also requires at least 2 months of training to give you this output. Now there's a second set of tools which actually has similar capabilities, which actually does impact analysis based on the code changes that your developers have done. For example, any build that you may get from a development team, you may actually have new methods getting added, or you may actually have methods, what I would say, getting modified, and you may also have methods getting removed by the developers. So your developers may do only these 3 types of changes. You may have an engine that listens to what is happening within your test environment, and the tool will actually, what the engine would actually do is, whenever you're getting a new build, it looks at what was executed previously, and it actually tells you exactly like, there are 100 test cases that you executed in the previous build, but in this build, your developer has actually modified 5 methods, he has removed 1 or 2 methods, and then there are 2 new methods he has added, for which you need to write new test cases. And it actually gives you a set of test cases as a recommendation, which is again based on code impact analysis and with the help of AI. So it actually does predictive analytics as well as AI-based algorithms to actually find this impact. And there are open source tools also that currently has this capability, especially for Java. You can use a tool called Drill4j, which actually has similar capabilities. And if you're going with a commercial solution, especially with, I would say, custom build applications, you have a product called C-Lights, which exactly does this, which is basically coming in from an Israeli-based company, which was acquired by Tricentis recently. And if you're dealing with any kind of SaaS packages, for example, you may be dealing with, I would say, SAP, or Salesforce, or maybe Oracle ERP, there are tools like OpKey and other tools which actually has this kind of capability. So the last use case that I'll cover is unit test case generation, which is, I would say, the most commonly, most common problem in any organization, because we are working in a sprint of 2 to 3 weeks. You may hardly get time. If you're a developer, you may hardly get maybe 1 or 2 weeks of time to complete your development. And most of the organizations actually, what I would say, like compromise on the unit test case generation part. So you may not actually spend enough time to write unit test cases. But there are a lot of frameworks like NUnit and JUnit that like allows you to generate test cases, that allows you to do unit testing, but you have to write the code, or you have to actually write tests to actually automate your code. So there are a lot of tools. Either you can use maybe GitHub Copilot, or one of the best tools that I've seen in this segment around AI is a tool called DiffBlue, which is primarily built for Java and Kotlin, which actually has the capability to go through your code. For example, you've written a method to add 2 numbers, maybe A and B. So the program or the tool called DiffBlue has the capability to actually analyze the code and then determine like what type of test should I actually use in order to test this method or find some. Assume that the method name is find some. It looks at maybe I can actually add 2 positive numbers. I can actually add 2 negative numbers, or I can actually add maybe a null value and a positive number. So it actually gives you the complete set of unit test cases. And it actually has the capability to at least generate, I would say, like a good set of number of unit test cases, maybe for 1,000 lines of code in a minute. And if a developer is actually doing it, it may take maybe weeks together to actually generate test cases of that quality as well as that volume. And now, the other problem that you might have is whenever your code changes, someone needs to go back and update your unit test cases, but that is also solved. So if you're integrating this tool with a DevOps pipeline, you can basically go ahead and, what I would say, integrate a tool called diffblue cover, which actually takes care of your updations also. So you don't have to worry about your unit test cases becoming obsolete. It also has the capability to automate the maintenance of your unit test cases. It's very similar to what you might have in self-healing, which is a common issue where you have automation scripts which are written for your UI, and your automation script will actually stop working if your user interface changes. And I've seen a lot of companies investing in automation nowadays. At the end of the day, I still see people doing manual testing because your scripts are becoming obsolete. Because your UI changes are not, what I would say, updated inside your scripts. And almost, I would say, almost every commercial tools that you see now actually has brought in this AI capability called self-healing, where you can actually maintain, or I would say, auto-update your scripts based on the changes that has happened to the UI. And it works very well with package application, but I have not seen an equivalent solution in the open source world, except a solution called Selenium, which actually works with open source tool like Selenium to actually do the self-healing. But otherwise, it's mostly a commercial solution that exists. So, in short, if you look at AI and software testing, these two kind of tools that you see can actually help you to improve productivity. So one important tool that I missed out is GitHub Copilot. There are n number of use cases that you can think about if you're actually working in test automation or in development. From a test automation standpoint, you can use GitHub Copilot to generate API test cases or API scripts that can be used to test your REST APIs or microservices. You can actually write, I would say, if you're very new to automation, you can learn what I would say programming language. You can actually refactor your code. There are like n number of use cases where you can actually use what I would say GitHub Copilot. And there are equal number of use cases where you can actually use ChatGPT or custom GPTs, I would say, which is basically, if you have a membership, you can go ahead and create your own GPT. So you can actually use custom GPTs also for various things, even for writing test cases, for maybe writing automation scripts and things like that. There are solutions that can actually help you to automate decision making. It can be a combination of maybe Python libraries with Power BI. You can also use AI to improve the customer experience or the experience that you're providing to customers, especially when you're dealing with maybe user experience related testing. There are solutions that looks at human emotions. When a person is using your application, it tells you whether the person was happy or sad when he or she was actually performing testing on your application. You can also improve speed of testing. You have the, I would say, like test case generation is a good example of such solutions. You can reduce rework cost. Maybe if you're actually able to find the issues with respect to user stories upfront, you can definitely reduce the rework cost. And then you can also automate a lot of these overheads that you have in your company, especially around reporting and other stuff, by actually deploying bots that can actually communicate with testers or developers in around things like reporting status, or even in deploying applications. I worked in an organization where there was a bot that was actually being developed for data provisioning. So whenever a tester wanted to deploy data into what I would say an environment, there was a chatbot that actually does that by communicating or interacting with the user just in text, what I would say natural language. So there are multiple use cases that you see around, I would say, AI. And the most interesting part is, like if you don't use any of these, whether you're working in testing or in any other stream, it is very important to start using these tools and what I would say technologies. Otherwise, I'm sure that maybe in the next, what I would say 2 or 3 years, you'll be soon replaced by someone smart or junior in your team who can actually do your job much better than I would say what you're doing. Because I've seen this, for example, if I look at software testing, the quality of test cases that actually comes out of some of these tools that I was talking about, especially around test generation, they were much better than what I would actually get by maybe employing a 1 to 3 year experienced tester. Because the quality of testing, the test cases are much, much better than what I could actually get from a human. So why should I pay for a test engineer in that case? Or if I have someone in my team who can actually use maybe these solutions or maybe a custom GPT or maybe a tool to generate test cases faster, I would actually pay for him rather than actually keeping someone who's more intelligent but less productive. So it's very important that you actually look at AI very seriously because I don't care much because I'm planning to retire in the next 2 or 3 years, but if you want to build a career maybe for 10 years, it is very important. Even I'm scared because I started looking at other aspects other than software testing and even software development. I was looking at digital marketing and other areas for my next work because I felt that I would actually become obsolete if I stay in the stream for maybe another 10 years. So I'll leave that at that point, and thank you so much. Any questions? Are there any questions around this? Any thoughts? There are many tools. I would say maybe from a test generation standpoint, I would say you should definitely look at this new tool called DevAssure, which is basically a tool that generates even test cases and automation scripts from Figma screens. Definitely from a user story standpoint, look at Copilot for DevOps, which is actually integrated with Azure DevOps. You can also look at Scope Master, which again a tool that is used for, I would say, user story reviews. Drill4j, if you are a company that uses Java for development, and maybe if your company is focused around maybe package applications, I would say look at tools like OpKey as well as Functionize from a test automation standpoint. There are many tools. You can just maybe ping me on LinkedIn. I have a list of tools, at least 50 tools which have AI capabilities. I'll be happy to share that. You had a question, please.
Yeah, so you mentioned about self-healing.
Yep.
So what models, I mean, is it like pre-trained to generate tests?
Not really, not really. So ideally, it is a combination of, I would say, visual aspects, like you basically do screen scraping with respect to, I would say, getting the controls from the screen. And that is mostly, I would say, custom algorithms that have been written, mostly using Python and other languages, which actually has the capability to identify objects by actually taking pictures or maybe doing screen captures. I would say it's basically image recognition. It's actually a combination of image recognition and custom algorithms that are used. That's the reason why you don't see that in open source tools or even in what I would say vendor-provided frameworks. I did personally try to do this around 3 years back, or maybe not 3 years, I would say around 2019. It took almost 4 people to generate this base algorithm. It took almost 1 year. So it was very complex because there was no open AI at that point of time. So the algorithm itself was around 5,000 lines of code, but it was mostly working on OCR. Yeah. So you basically look at screen controls and then find out what are the alternate properties and things like that. And there's also some level of intelligence that is required to identify why a script has failed. So that is another set of algorithms that you may have to develop, where your script can fail because of a UI change, your script can fail because of a bug, and the script can fail if your environment is too fast or too slow, or it can be n number of reasons. There are like 7 to 8 reasons why a script can fail. So initially you have to actually do that analysis before you go ahead and, what I would say, make a fix. That is one. The second important aspect, why it is so complex, is you should not slow down on your execution speed while you're doing self-healing. So it should be a multi-threaded algorithm that actually runs and looks at all the controls that you're having inside a screen or a page, and it actually should start doing this fixing or healing in an automated manner in a multi-threaded mode. So what I've seen is like there are applications or tools that actually does self-healing currently, but they're too slow because it's actually working in a sequential mode. So it is, I would say, like you can maybe take a look at this tool called Helenium, which is, I would say, one of the best that I've seen in the open source world around self-healing, but otherwise it's mostly commercial. And don't expect more than 80% accuracy, maybe 60 to 70 is what you can expect. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh, for that fascinating session. Now let's welcome Deepu Devarajan, one of our core member, to hand over a token of appreciation.